As soon as the dog steps back into the house, he catches a scent on his mistress that has fundamentally changed. He knows all too well that this is an ominous sign of a health crisis brewing within Eve's body. Yet Eve remains blissfully unaware of the danger lurking beneath the surface, as she is completely consumed by the joy of her impending motherhood. The dog longs to step forward and warn her, but fate has cruelly denied him the gift of speech. He originally believed that since his mistress was so active and loved exercise, she would surely conquer any illness. Yet the very thing he dreaded most finally comes to pass on this fateful day. While Eve is taking him for a hike this afternoon, she finds herself gasping for air after only a few short steps. Just as Eve is forcing herself to push through the exhaustion
I'm okay.
and continue her trek, she suddenly collapses onto the hard ground in the blink of an eye. To make matters even more desperate for the dog, the surrounding area is completely deserted, with not a soul in sight. He bellows with every ounce of strength in his lungs, desperately trying to summon a lifeline for his mistress. Fortunately, his persistent barking manages to draw the attention of nearby hikers just in time. Although Eve is whisked away by an ambulance in a blur, the dog could never have imagined that by the time they see each other again, they would be facing an outcome too devastating to bear. To understand this profound bond, we have to travel back to the very first encounter between the dog and his master, Denny. The moment they first locked eyes, a spark of soulful resonance ignited between the little pup and Denny. Unlike his littermates, the little guy knows exactly how to make a move, stepping forward to gently nuzzle Denny's fingers with his wet nose, a display of wit and charm that instantly wins Denny's heart.
Definitely this one.
It's the pick of the litter.
She always said that.
Well, just a minute now. We were thinking of keeping them.
He always said that too.
Amidst the glowing praises from the farm owners, Denny is more than willing to fork over double the price to secure this puppy as his very own. From that day forward, they officially begin a life of inseparable companionship. Denny is a rising star in the world of professional racing, a man who seems invincible on the track as he racks up an endless collection of championship trophies. Whenever he pulls up to the starting line, the roar of the crowd in the bleachers becomes absolutely deafening. During the day, Enzo the dog follows Denny to the racetrack to witness the lightning-fast speeds and the rush of adrenaline. By night, they share a silent understanding as they curl up at home, basking in the quiet and cozy moments of their shared life. They assumed this picture-perfect happiness would last forever, but they never expected a girl named Eve to suddenly burst into their lives and steal Denny's undivided attention away from Enzo. Eve is sweet-faced with a captivating aura, and it only takes one look for Denny to be completely smitten. Keenly sensing a threat to his territory, Enzo keeps a watchful, unwavering eye on this newcomer. Watching them hit it off so well, Enzo frantically tugs at his leash in an attempt to drag his master away, yet he severely underestimates the depth of Denny's infatuation. Ultimately, Denny takes the initiative to leave his contact information. Under Denny's passionate pursuit, the two of them quickly make their relationship official. Eve attends every single one of Denny's races to cheer him on, sharing in the pure ecstasy of every victory. It isn't long before they hold a wedding that is the pinnacle of romance. Even though Enzo's heart is filled with a touch of resentment, he still plays the part of the good boy, carrying the wedding rings down the aisle to Denny and silently witnessing his master's happiness in his own doggy way. Observing Denny and Eve in their moments of domestic intimacy, a jealous Enzo intentionally knocks items off the table in a desperate bid to disrupt the sweet atmosphere. However, much to Enzo's surprise, his mischief does absolutely nothing to dampen the couple's spirits, and this realization plunges the poor pup into a pit of endless disappointment. From then on, Enzo adopts the role of the household's most reliable guardian, shadowing Eve's every move and waiting for the day she might finally pack her bags. Unexpectedly, on one quiet afternoon, Eve delivers news that causes Enzo to finally drop his guard for good.
Pregnant. Yeah.
In order to provide a better life for the new life about to arrive, Denny begins to travel more frequently for his races. Consequently, during these periods of long separation, the heavy responsibility of taking care of Eve falls squarely onto Enzo's shoulders. While he expected these days to be lonely, they actually end up getting along surprisingly well. On this day, Eve gestures for Enzo to rest his head on her belly, marking the first time he has ever shared such an intimate moment with her. Unexpectedly, a powerful kick from her belly suddenly rings out, startling Enzo and causing him to recoil in surprise. Feeling the vibrant rhythm of that tiny new life, Enzo finally realizes that Eve has become an irreplaceable member of his family, and a heartwarming thought begins to blossom in his mind.
I just hoped it would look like me.
As the days slowly drift by, there is only 1 week left before Eve's due date. Just as the couple is soaking in the anticipation of the baby's arrival, Denny receives an invitation to a high-profile race with a massive cash prize on the line. But Denny is well aware that his wife could go into labor at any moment, and he fears that leaving now would mean missing the precious birth of his child. However, just as he is about to turn down this rare opportunity, Eve steps in and insists that he must go and compete. In her eyes, this isn't just about the money, as it is a golden chance for her husband to truly make a name for himself. Seeing how selfless and supportive Eve is, Enzo finally understands exactly why Denny is so hopelessly in love with her. But as we know, fate has a cruel sense of humor. On the very day Denny hits the track, Eve starts showing signs of labor. As the engines roar on the racetrack, the contractions at home only become more intense for Eve. Enzo keeps a frantic watch over Eve while silently sending up prayers for Denny far away on the circuit. Miraculously, at the exact moment Denny pushes past his rivals to cross the finish line, the sound of a baby's cry rings out through the house. New life and the glory of victory arrive in the very same breath.
I had never encountered a creature quite so beautiful.
Zoe, this is Enzo. He's your family too. And he'll always protect you.
Early the next morning, Denny rushes back home through a torrential downpour. Looking down at his newborn daughter, he is filled with a crushing sense of guilt, not just for failing his wife in her time of need, but for missing those first vital moments of his child's life. Yet Eve harbors no resentment, knowing all too well that to build a better future for this family, they must endure more hardships than most. From that day on, Enzo quietly takes on the heavy mantle of looking after his little mistress, Zoe. Every time Denny heads out to the track, he remains glued to Zoe's side, providing her with a sense of security through his silent guardianship. Under Enzo's tender care, Zoe eventually reaches her 7th birthday. Nothing makes Enzo prouder than hearing Zoe introduce him to others as her very own big brother. Over the years, Enzo has become more than just a playmate, as he even mimics the adults at times, acting as a furry mentor to guide her through life. They thought this simple happiness would last forever. But then comes the day when Enzo catches that familiar, unsettling change in Eve's scent once again. He wants to warn her, but with no voice to speak, he can only watch in despair as illness begins to devour Eve's body like a relentless demon. Eve simply brushes it off as exhaustion from overwork and, never suspecting the worst, packs her bags to take her daughter to her parents' house for a visit. Unfortunately, her clouded mind causes her to completely forget about Enzo back at home, leaving him without a single drop of water or a morsel of food. In the grueling days that follow, Enzo is forced to scavenge for stray bits of kibble on the floor and lap up water from the toilet to survive, eventually having no choice but to relieve himself right on the carpet. Clinging to his frail body, he somehow manages to endure 3 agonizing days and nights on his own. Finally, on the morning of the 4th day, a travel-worn Denny arrives back home. Seeing a half-dead Enzo and the mess on the carpet, the reality of the situation hits him like a ton of bricks. He dials Eve's number immediately, unable to stop himself from lashing out at her in a fit of rage.
Wait, Eve, hold. He's been here the whole time? I thought you took him with you.
Oddly enough, this moment makes Enzo feel incredibly warm inside, as it's the first time in years that Denny has ever blown up at Eve on his behalf. But this warmth does not last for long. A piece of exciting news soon breaks the deadlock between the couple. Because Denny has consistently stayed at the top of the racing standings for so long, he is actually scouted by a top-tier star racing team that invites him to serve as both a coach and a lead driver. But this also means that from now on, the amount of time Denny can spend with his family will only continue to dwindle. The next morning, Denny hurriedly leaves home once again, carrying his unfulfilled dreams with him as he sets out. Meanwhile, Eve takes Enzo for a slow, peaceful walk through the woods. But they haven't gone very far when her legs suddenly give out, and she collapses to the ground without any warning at all. Fortunately, Enzo's piercing and desperate cries quickly attract the help of nearby passers-by. However, the hospital strictly prohibits pets from entering, and Enzo finds himself barred at the main gate. Anxious beyond belief, he now hates the fact that he is nothing more than a dog with every fiber of his being. Even though Denny offers gentle comfort over and over, saying that Eve will surely get better in time, Enzo knows deep down that this is nothing but a self-deceptive lie. He wishes more than anything to stay by Eve's side without ever leaving, but that tightly shut door cruelly separates him from his most urgent concern. During the days Eve is hospitalized, Denny has no choice but to hit the pause button on his career and shoulder the heavy burden of caring for the family all by himself.
When's Mommy gonna come home?
Facing his daughter's innocent and tender questions, Denny has absolutely no idea how to respond. He fears her young heart won't be able to handle the brutal truth, so he is forced to maintain a calm facade and gently deflect her with tender lies. But every weekend, when his daughter is sent to her grandmother's house, Denny is left all alone in the empty building, tightly wrapped in a shroud of endless loneliness and suffering. Enzo sees all of this but cannot offer any words of comfort, so he silently brings over the leash in hopes of taking him for a walk to help disperse the heavy shadows in his master's heart. In the blink of an eye, several months pass, and Denny goes from being completely overwhelmed by childcare to gradually becoming calm and proficient. Enzo originally thought it would be a long time before he saw Eve again, but to his surprise, as autumn quietly arrives, the doctors finally agree to let Eve be discharged and return home. When Enzo sees Eve finally return home, he can hardly believe his own eyes, because the Eve who was once so radiant, with eyes that overflowed with starlight whenever she smiled, has been reduced to a gaunt and utterly fragile version of herself after being repeatedly tormented by illness. Chemotherapy has not only stripped Eve of her charming blonde hair, but has also taken away the warmth and light this home used to possess. Meanwhile, that scent of decay that has always unsettled Enzo has grown even more pungent, sending waves of panic through his heart. That night, Eve calmly expresses her thoughts. She believes that continuing treatment has long since become meaningless, and that instead of suffering in a cold hospital room, she would rather spend her final days surrounded by her family. From then on, Enzo keeps watch by Eve's bedside every single night, hoping that his steadfast presence will drive away the demon that wants to take her away. But his sleepless vigils only result in endless exhaustion during the daylight hours. Sometimes, Denny joins Enzo for the night watch, yet even after staying up all night, he never dares to stop and rest during the day. In front of his wife, he must force himself to maintain an appearance of strength at all costs. Enzo sees all of this, and his heart is filled with bitterness and heartache, but he is just a dog, and no matter how anxious he feels, he is ultimately powerless to help. However, cruel fate arrives on schedule after all. Late that night, Eve quietly says her final goodbye to Enzo. The next morning, as the warm sunlight floods the room once again, Eve passes away from this world forever. Denny thought he had long since prepared himself mentally, but when the moment actually arrives, he still plunges into a state of inconsolable grief. He wants to tell Zoe the news of her mother's passing, but the words simply won't come out, no matter how hard he tries. He is terrified that this brutal truth will instantly shatter his daughter's innocent and pure little world. But some things, no matter how difficult they are to accept, must eventually be faced with courage. Eve's parents organize a dignified funeral for their daughter, while Enzo is left behind to stay home all by himself. Yet he still mourns his beloved mistress in his own unique way. He lies quietly on the sofa, breathing in the lingering scent on one of Eve's hats. To help Zoe move past the grief of losing her mother as quickly as possible, Enzo proactively picks up a ball, wanting to play with her. However, it is clear that he has significantly underestimated just how resilient Zoe truly is. Since his little mistress doesn't need comforting, Enzo turns to stay by Denny's side, attempting to soothe his suffering master with his presence. But before Denny can even catch his breath from the crushing grief of losing his wife, an even greater storm suddenly comes crashing down on him. His in-laws suddenly strike at this moment, attempting to forcibly take away the custody of Zoe. Denny refuses without a second thought, as he will never allow anyone to separate him from his daughter. But Maxwell actually sues Denny directly, on the grounds that Denny is unable to take care of the child on his own. This sudden calculation causes Denny to explode with rage in an instant. Unwilling to get bogged down in further confrontation, Denny turns to leave, only for Maxwell to suddenly grab him. Denny instinctively shakes him off, accidentally throwing Maxwell against the railing in the process. but Denny could never have imagined that such an unintentional act would nearly push him into an even deeper abyss of despair. Back at home, Denny falls into a state of profound confusion. He lies on the sofa, looking completely dejected and lost. Enzo sees all of this and silently carries the remote over to Denny. Because in the past, whenever Denny was feeling down, Eve would use this method to help him forget his troubles for a while. In order to fight for the custody of his daughter, Denny hires a famous local lawyer named Mark. After reviewing the case, the lawyer confidently states that as long as Denny doesn't give up on the lawsuit, victory is practically a done deal, since the law traditionally awards children to their biological parents. However, they both underestimated the ruthless tactics Maxwell is willing to use to take Zoe away. Just when Denny thinks he has the upper hand, he is suddenly apprehended by the police without explanation while working his part-time job at the garage, with the charges being that he violated the law by pushing Maxwell earlier. Watching his master being forcibly taken away with his own eyes, Enzo is nearly driven mad with anxiety as that bone-deep despair wraps around him once again. This is the second time he has experienced such a feeling of helplessness, the first being the moment Eve was carried onto the ambulance. Luckily, Mark manages to bail Denny out of jail in time, but as soon as he returns home, a friend tells him that Maxwell has already taken Zoe away. It is only at this moment that Denny realizes that Maxwell had calculated everything from the very beginning. Yet before he can even recover from the shock, Mark brings even more devastating news. Maxwell is using the bone fracture from that push to insist that Denny has violent tendencies, making it a lethal bargaining chip in the custody battle. To make matters even worse for Denny's breakdown, because he is under criminal investigation, the judge has directly stripped him of all visitation rights to see his daughter for a full 3 months. And so, Denny and Enzo return to a life where they have only each other. But their constant companionship now has long since lost the warmth and peace of mind it once held. Denny becomes more depressed and haggard by the day, and while Enzo watches with a heavy heart, he can do nothing but stay by his side silently. Just as despair is about to completely swallow these days whole, Enzo finally finds the perfect opportunity to get revenge on Denny's behalf. Because Zoe remains gloomy and depressed all day long, Maxwell decides to bring Enzo over to keep her company. When Zoe innocently asks why her father hasn't come to visit her, Enzo feels a strange sense of relief for the first time that he is just a dog who cannot speak, as he truly wouldn't know how to explain the complexities and helplessness of the adult world to such a young child. Once Zoe falls fast asleep, Enzo quietly begins his covert plan for revenge. Despite the embarrassment and shame he feels inside, Enzo completes this unconventional form of retaliation, which results in him being promptly kicked out and sent back by Maxwell. However, on this very day, Denny's life is finally about to reach a major turning point. A representative from the prestigious Ferrari team personally pays him a visit, as he deeply admires Denny's talent and grit on the track, and sincerely invites him to join the team to conquer the racing world. But this dream opportunity that countless people would give their lives for means that Denny must move far away, and more importantly, it means he won't be able to see his daughter for a very long time. Understanding his predicament, the representative leaves a business card before departing, still holding on to a glimmer of hope for a future collaboration. Finally, after enduring 3 agonizing months of waiting, Denny secures the hard-won chance to visit his daughter. Yet this brief reunion is limited to a mere 3 hours. When Mark arrives to pick up Zoe again, he brings a crushing piece of bad news. Maxwell is relentlessly accusing Denny of intentional injury, which means Denny could not only face prison time at any moment, but also that his final hope of winning custody has been almost completely snuffed out. However, Maxwell also offers a way out. If Denny voluntarily signs away his parental rights, they will immediately drop all charges and leave him in peace. In Mark's professional view, rather than gambling everything and losing it all, it is better to preserve his freedom so he can still visit his daughter normally in the future, which he believes is the only realistic choice left. But as Denny looks at his innocent and lovely daughter, he refuses to compromise no matter the cost. Under the crushing weight of all these layered pressures, Denny is pushed to the brink of a total mental breakdown. That night, while he is jogging in the rain to vent his inner pain and indignation, Enzo, who has been quietly following behind him, suddenly meets with a terrible accident. Denny frantically rushes Enzo to the veterinary clinic, and after the doctor performs emergency treatment through the night, the elderly Enzo manages to hang on to his life, although the car accident has caused severe internal bleeding. In the doctor's eyes, the aging Enzo has essentially been handed a death sentence. Yet, against all odds, Enzo pulls through by sheer force of will. While unconscious, he constantly revisits the years spent by Denny's side, as the unspoken understanding from their life of shared survival transforms into an invisible strength that tells him over and over in his heart that he must stay by Denny's side to see him through this crisis. When Enzo finally opens his eyes, he sees Mark appearing in the house once again. It seems that Denny is already exhausted and can no longer sustain this grueling legal battle, so he finally plans to follow the advice and sign away his daughter's custody. Just as his pen is about to touch the paper to finalize the deal, the previously weak Enzo suddenly bursts with an incredible surge of strength and lunges forward to sink his teeth into the document. By the time everyone chases him into the yard, that humiliating agreement has already been bitten into tiny shreds. And it is this crazy and persistent act by Enzo that reignites Denny's long-extinguished fighting spirit. Fast forward to the high-stakes courtroom, where all the unfavorable evidence points directly at Denny, and Maxwell's false testimony nearly causes him to lose everything. Just when it seems like everything is settled and the judge is about to declare Denny's defeat, the grandmother Trish finally wakes up under the heavy condemnation of her conscience and overturns all the lies and pretenses in open court. Ultimately, Maxwell has no choice but to drop all charges, and Denny not only clears his name, but finally wins back the full custody of his daughter. Sunlight finally shines into this broken home once again. Zoe's birthday arrives as scheduled, and Maxwell and Trish even show up with gifts to join the celebration. Denny does not shut them out, as he understands in his heart that their past actions were born out of their love for Zoe and a desire for her to have a stable life. Zoe's return fills the long, quiet home with laughter and joy once more. However, the elderly Enzo has long since lost his former vitality and can only lie quietly under the table, silently soaking in this reclaimed warmth. One day, when Denny returns home from work, a sight makes his heart tighten. Enzo is lying motionless in the living room, unable to control his own body. Denny doesn't utter a single word of blame, but Enzo feels completely overwhelmed by a sense of shame. Denny carefully carries him onto the sofa and gently runs his fingers through Enzo's graying fur. In these final moments, they watch a racing program together just like they used to, except this time, Enzo no longer has the strength to mimic the motions of driving. At that very moment, Denny suddenly realizes that although he has competed on tracks countless times, he has never actually taken Enzo to experience the thrill of high speed even once. He immediately borrows a sports car, determined to fulfill this final wish for his loyal old companion. The red sports car tears up the track, while the gentle breeze brushes past Enzo's nose, taking his thoughts back through his long and meaningful life. He has witnessed Denny's growth from a green youth to a steady and reliable father, seen the arrival of Zoe, and silently bid farewell to the departed Eve. Having lived out his life in this family filled with love, Enzo has no more regrets in his soul. Facing the impending departure, Enzo feels no fear at all, because he remembers Eve saying that death is not the end. He has also heard that if a dog meets a master who truly loves them in this life, they can be reincarnated as a human in the next. Enzo believes he has been happy enough, and he hopes that when he returns, he can find his way back to Denny's side. Time flies by, and with a shift of the lens, 8 years have already passed. Now, Denny is the star driver for the Ferrari team, and the once childish Zoe has grown into a graceful young woman. On the day of a race, Zoe brings along a little superfan of Denny's. That soft brown hair and those clear, familiar eyes give Denny an indescribable sense of recognition. Unable to contain his curiosity, he speaks up to ask about the boy's identity.
Come ti chiami?
Enzo.
The simple self-introduction feels like a bolt of lightning cutting through the silence of the past, stirring up massive waves in the depths of Denny's heart. Without any need for extra words, the moment their eyes meet, that bond that transcends life and death seems to quietly entwine their fates together once again. This is a romantic and pure film that lacks forced preaching or elaborate dialogue, yet touches millions of viewers with its raw storytelling. Enzo's life is long and passionate, and those deep feelings hidden in his silent companionship, along with those bonds that span across time, pierce the softest parts of our hearts with every single word. We have all had moments of powerlessness, just like Enzo, who clearly smelled the danger surrounding Eve but couldn't speak to warn her, or who felt the pain of Denny's breakdown but could only stay by his side. His jealousy is real, moving from his initial resistance toward Eve for taking his master's attention to his willing guardianship of her and the life in her womb. His loyalty is pure, as he exhausts his strength to tear up the agreement, giving up custody just to help his master hold on to his final hope. The most moving part of this movie is never some grand, explosive vow, but rather the steady, long-term perseverance. Enzo uses his entire life to witness the joys and sorrows of a family. He doesn't understand the concept of responsibility, yet he spends his life practicing the true meaning of companionship. He doesn't understand what parting means, yet he uses his persistence to explain the essence of love and longing. While we are busy chasing lights in the distance, we often complain about the trivialities and regrets of life, yet we frequently overlook the most silent companionship right beside us. Little do we know that those quiet guardianships and those fearless commitments are precisely the most precious gifts in our lives. Enzo's life tells us that love is never a grand declaration, but rather the simple, day-to-day act of staying together. Years pass silently, but companionship leaves a permanent mark. The meaning of life is not its length, but its depth. The meaning of love is not taking, but giving. May we all cherish the companionship around us and treat every sincere encounter with kindness. Even if we go through storms and face separations, we can still move forward with love and courage, because those longings carved into our hearts and those bonds that transcend time will ultimately become the warmest strength on our journey forward.